Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. First things first, big thanks to James English for the shout out on his video James English Exposes Shaun Attwood. Really appreciate that shout out, James. The video has done huge numbers and I thought it was an excellent video. The massive engagement on that video proves that a lot of people are keeping an eye on Mr. Atwood, and he really isn't the kind of person who can go around calling people out without his own issues rising up to the surface. I'm going to cover his panicked and seething response to James in a little bit, a response in which Atwood deflected, gaslit and answered questions which nobody asked. But one thing is for sure, based on his response, if the daddygate situation ever goes mainstream, i.e. off YouTube, his explanations would not hold up to any actual scrutiny whatsoever, not by anyone with half a brain. I'll put the link down below to James's video, and thanks again to James. Hello to all the new subscribers as well who came along from James's channel. I do hope you stick around. For your information, the only reason I even talk about Shaun Attwood is because I was a fan of his when the daddygate situation unfolded. I was in the audience as it happened, just like many others, and I've watched him slowly twist and settle on the narrative that we have today, which is that the only people talking about it are trolls, and it was all the woman's idea, and people are just fabricating stories about Shaun Attwood in order to bring him down. You'll have noticed that Mr. Atwood doesn't actually have one single critic. Anyone who disagrees with him or questions his explanation is simply branded a troll, which is statistically extremely unlikely, and he's gaslighting his entire audience, both in his response to James English and in this little tour that he's doing around other YouTube channels recently. What is gaslighting then? So apart from being an overused term at the moment, it is in fact a technique often used by abusers to wear down and demoralise their targets, whereby they make people doubt their own observations and recollections about things. Telling people something is all in their mind when it isn't, telling them that they've misremembered something when they haven't, and telling them that something was unintentional when it wasn't. These are examples of gaslighting. Ever since Shaun Attwood got banned and unbanned twice by YouTube, he's been doing the rounds on smaller channels, ostensibly to discuss free speech and censorship, but his actual goal seems to be to use these channels' hosts and audiences to rewrite the narrative about the daddygate situation, to get more people on board with the idea that all his critics are trolls and whatever you've heard about him is just lies, even going so far as to claim that everything is just made up. Now you might be wondering what the daddygate situation is. That was when a video leaked of Atwood and a vulnerable autistic podcast guest of his. She was billed on his show as a sex trafficking victim, a child abuse victim, a gang rape victim, and a very vulnerable person who a lot of viewers felt sorry for. Her pseudonym is Cali, and as you may well know, he recorded her in his home, dressed as a child, calling him daddy and acting as if she was about to perform a sex act on him. That didn't go down very well with his audience, nor did it go down well with his co-host at the time, Sonia Poulton.
This, to me, no matter if they approved or not, it's wrong. It was just wrong. And I want to tackle that video. That video where Cali is you and her are in a father-daughter play role, that first video, right? She's on her knees, she's in a submissive pose, she's undoing your flies. She actually appears to be pulling back your pants, Shaun. That is problematic for a lot of people because it's everything that you are opposed to. And yet, I don't know what madness took place between you and Cali, that there wasn't a point where one of you said, "This is insane."
Now to be clear, Sonia did seem to be trying to help him get out of jail free, that's my opinion of course, but even she could not hide her anger and disapproval of Atwood's behaviour because he was meant to be helping Cali. Cali was clearly very vulnerable, she was on his show to talk about abuse that she was experiencing, plus a lot of people were actually donating to a GoFundMe which Mr. Atwood set up to help Cali. Now, this did not stop Mr. Atwood at the time coming out with the least plausible explanation ever as to why he had filmed his guest on her knees dressed as a child.
So one of my other motivations was to try and do something that looked so genuine to people that when they did finally see our reconstruction video, it would possibly increase their critical thinking skills when it came to scenarios like I've seen with Darren G and other people, showing how easy it is to just create something to destroy somebody's reputation.
And if you don't believe that Cali is vulnerable, as I've heard some people say she is not, then let's go back to Sonia.
We cannot forget that she has been prostituted, raped, beaten, she's autistic. This has all the hallmarks of everything of somebody being very vulnerable, extremely vulnerable.
The fact of the matter is that Cali is vulnerable. So there is that, and of course Mr. Atwood also admitted to what he is accused of as well.
I took advantage of a trafficked, vulnerable person reenacting this, and it made him relive it, and it probably traumatized that person.
But despite that, he's still acting as if he is totally innocent, and he's now going on these other shows claiming that any impropriety is all in people's heads, claiming that myself and others who disagree with his behaviour are trolls who are making up sexual scenarios in their minds in order to bring him down, and that is what annoys me.
So ask me your toughest questions. Come on, trolls. I've answered what you've thrown at me so far. What else you got on me? Nothing. No proof of anything. You ask ridiculous questions without any proof over and over again. And you're fixated on these things, these fantasies, in your own wacko minds.
He completely glosses over the fact that the daddygate video was explicitly sexual. It's a woman unzipping a man's trousers, and that woman is dressed as a child, Daddy's little girl, in Mr. Atwood's own words. Now, when questioned about why Cali is dressed like a little girl in his video, which seems a fair question for an anti-paedophilia campaigner, he tries to get people into a game of semantics, stating that he did not dress her up like that, and saying, "Show me a video of me dressing her up like that," as if such a video is going to exist.
And for the trolls in the channel right now who are saying I dressed that girl up, show me a video of me dressing that woman up. Show me the proof of your claims.
As I say, pure semantics. He's trying to make the host believe that he's debunking a troll there, but nobody's accusing him of putting her arms through the armholes and her legs through the leg holes. What they're accusing him of is being well aware that she was dressed as a child while he was filming her.
And the outfit that Cali wore in the naughty video that we manufactured for Anne. Here's the outfit, Daddy's little girl. Yeah, I know it's distasteful to some people.
This is something that many of his supporters are prepared to simply ignore, but to others, it's hard to ignore this from somebody in Atwood's position who interviews vulnerable survivors of abuse and claims to be an activist.
I've announced on the channel that I'm launching a war against paedophiles, and we want the end of the war on drugs.
I've described it as degenerate behaviour before, and I stand by that. Here he is in the first podcast with Cali, asking her to describe her first ever experience of sexual abuse, guiding her into discussing it.
Was that the first abuse that you suffered, though? Did you suffer abuse as a child?
Yeah, as a child.
What was the very, very first abuse you suffered?
Probably about 4 years old.
And what could you just...
That was my uncle.
That was your uncle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Putting aside the question as to why he would then go on and partially recreate this with her, when he knows that she's autistic, when she's clearly vulnerable, when we've been told that she's been abused all her life, even ongoing while the podcasts were getting filmed.
You know, this is the first person I've ever interviewed who's presently being trafficked. And people saying, you know, why isn't this in the podcast studio, blah, blah, blah.
For him to claim to people that there's nothing sexual in this, and it's all in people's heads, is totally disrespectful and out of order.
Like, I saw those photos, right? And of her where she's bending over, right? This is obscene. This is not okay that in your position, you are doing stuff like this. I have to be straight with you, Shaun.
Now, I'm well aware that they're both consenting adults, and my point is not that anything illegal is going on, it's that Cali went on his show to get help. He had a duty of care over her. She ended up staying at his flat at the request of Guildford Council apparently, and then she tried to kill herself in his flat, which he reported to us in a video that he deleted very quickly.
Cali tried to kill herself at my place last night. I haven't slept, been worried sick, and I was in shock. So, if you've watched the 4 parts about Cali, I imagine they're going to get taken down soon. And, if you have donated to her, I will definitely make sure she gets all the money.
And shortly after we were told that Cali had attempted suicide in his home, the naked photos and video of Cali ended up surfacing. Now, when you've got the benefit of hindsight, it's clear that something was not right. Why was she getting interviewed in his home, for example? That was a big question that was actually getting asked at the time. And also, before the Daddy video leaked, there was Shaun's unusual reaction to Cali talking about servicing men who wish to engage in fairly horrifying things. The natural response to this would usually be to recoil in disgust, I would have thought, but I'm really not sure what Mr. Atwood's reaction was here.
And how many of them harbour fantasies about going with underage?
There's countless guys who dress me up as their daughter and call me their daughter's name.
The guys dress you up as their daughter and call you their daughter's name, their own actual daughter's name. And how many of the clients have done that over the years? Countless.
You don't need to be a body language expert to see that something is going on there, and it makes me wonder why Cali mentioned that in the first place. Bear in mind, this was apparently after the daddygate video had been filmed, but before anyone knew about it. So they'd had that experience of filming that video together already, and Cali is now bringing it up on the podcast. Very strange. And then a photo was leaked showing Mr. Atwood with his tongue in Cali's mouth. Again, they are 100% consenting adults, but Mr. Atwood is claiming that the sexual scenarios are being made up in the heads of the trolls. He also told me very early on in a livestream message on the What Is Truth podcast that I was jealous of his sex life. And just in case you don't know, by the way, Wheezy of the What Is Truth podcast was one of Shaun Attwood's largest and most ferocious critics, and he's been flagged off YouTube, which Mr. Attwood claims some kind of credit for, despite claiming to be all about freedom of speech, even for his doubters.
Down with Wheezy and What Is Truth!
You should subscribe to Wheezy on Odyssey because he's got a lot more information about Shaun Attwood that you may very well much enjoy. He's also been targeted by Atwood's little police informant buddy, who has reported both Wheezy and myself to the police. That's how much Atwood cares about free speech. Not only does he want you taken off platforms, he wants you arrested as well. We also can't forget the conversation Cali had with Brian Harvey. Yes, this rabbit hole runs quite deep.
And then me and you go, well, so was it right that you slept with Cali the first day that you interviewed her and then got her into bed within like 2 hours? Is that right? What he's supposed to be there helping me. Yeah, he's not supposed to be trying to get into my pants.
Shout out to Brian Harvey if he's listening. I hope he's well. That was Cali saying that Shaun Attwood was meant to help her and he shouldn't have been getting in her pants within 2 hours of meeting her. And she also said that the daddygate video was nothing to do with any prank, it was filmed for Shaun Attwood's own consumption.
The daddy video was his own personal enjoyment. That video is a personal video, nothing to do with the prank. No, because the video was done weeks before he even thought about the prank.
Now, one thing that Mr. Atwood never mentions when he's addressing daddygate is the fact that Cali was pleasuring herself in many of the photographs. If there was nothing sexual going on, why would that be a thing? If you don't believe me, we'll go back to Sonia.
There is extremely graphic material on there. I don't need to tell you, which some people claim was taken in your flat, of her, engaged in sort of, masturbation, really, frankly. And people say that was taken on your sofa and that you videoed that.
I took some of the photos and she had friends over who took some of the content as well.
I mean, You know it sounds mad, don't you?
Yes.
So you've got all that, and yet we're meant to believe that the hundreds, possibly thousands of people who witnessed this unfold at the time, certainly thousands now, are just making up sick sexual scenarios in their perverted minds and trolling Shaun Attwood. So it's us that are the perverts and the trolls, not him. Got it. He is doubling down like crazy, he's seething and he's making silly mistakes once again. He posted a video of Cali on his channel just the other day, which he says exonerates him. He said it was filmed for his lawyers, believe it or not, and it's so bad that it got completely ratioed. It had twice the number of dislikes to likes, and then he deleted it within an hour, which was probably an extremely wise move by Mr. Atwood. That video was put on Atwood's channel just after James English released his video, so it's as if Atwood released it in haste, realised it was a big mistake, and then deleted it. The video itself was basically Cali confirming that she's just been trolling everyone and that it was her idea to dress as a child and get on her knees for Mr. Atwood while calling him daddy. Here he is discussing that video on the Matt or Falia channel.
And before she went to prison, she's in prison now, before she went to prison, she made a video for my lawyer in case anything legal happened, saying the truth of everything that happened regarding her outfit, that she entirely had dressed herself up like that because she was involved with baiting pedos. Had nothing to do with dressing her up like that. And there's no proof or video of me dressing her up like that. It's all in the sick minds of these perverted trolls. They come up with more and more bizarre sexual ideas and fantasies about me every week. Last year, every week they had a different scenario built in their own sick minds. Here's the outfit, daddy's little girl. Yeah, I know it's distasteful to some people.
Mr. Atwood apparently thinks that this video was some kind of gotcha that destroyed James English's video. It didn't. It doesn't change a thing, because it doesn't matter whose idea any of this was. Atwood still let it happen, and he still filmed it. And, once again, this is supposed to be a vulnerable podcast guest. He's not meant to be going along with her weird sexual ideas. They're on his show to talk about their abuse. It's not appropriate that he's doing this with them. You've also got the fact that Cali herself has said that the daddygate video was actually just for Shaun himself, and she said that during a recorded conversation that she did not know was being recorded. So this Cali video that he posted, which you can no longer see on his channel, he mentions it several times in his response to James English as evidence that he's debunked all claims. Why then has he deleted it? I'll let you make your own mind up. It was actually captured in its entirety and it was uploaded on a channel called Brett Gustave, and I will link it below. It's actually the full version of a video that we've discussed before on this channel, and I think it's only fair that you go and watch it yourself, because as I say, you should really make your own mind up on it as to why people mass downvoted it and left loads of comments telling him to delete it ASAP. When your supporters are telling you to delete things ASAP, you know you messed up. In that video he tries to hit on basically all points, trying to shift the blame on every single criticism that has come his way. He's either trying to shift the blame onto Cali or trying to shift the blame onto other people. He mentions the time that he was sacked from Brand YouTube, which is another platform, and he was sacked over the daddygate video itself.
It was exposed that Shaun Attwood had made an inappropriate video featuring a woman who had been trafficked.
This was, without question, a horrendous, devastating situation that came about. With everything that it's about, Shaun's the first one to understand that.
There have been questions asked about the money raised. Shaun and the woman promoted funds that viewers were contributing to, while, it would appear, sex images were uploaded to a site which advertised the woman's services. His behaviour and my association with him would be used as a stick to beat me with, and would hinder what I have long worked for, which is the protection of children.
And to me, it was absolutely out of the question that I can bring Shaun back, and it still is.
He says they forced him to admit everything if he wanted his job back. This is his way of explaining away the clip of him admitting that he took advantage of a trafficked vulnerable person. It really makes no sense, this take by Shaun Attwood, because he's already admitted that it was him filming Cali, and he's also admitted to taking some of the photographs. So he doesn't need to admit it, it's there to see. But if for whatever reason Mr. Atwood truly believes that he's done nothing wrong in this case and everything is other people's fault, then still I don't understand why he'd admit to taking advantage of a trafficked vulnerable person and recreating their sexual abuse if that's not what happened. Nobody watching this video would be prepared to admit to something like that just because your employer told you to, if you never did it. You would be outraged and fighting tooth and nail, denying the absolute hell out of it, especially when the scandal involves a sexualised video of you with a vulnerable woman dressed as a kid. You would only admit that if you'd actually done it and your boss told you, you better just go on there and admit everything and then we'll try and get a handle on this scandal. It's laughable that Mr. Atwood expects people to believe that he just admitted it to keep his job. Like most things with Mr. Atwood, it doesn't make any sense if you follow Occam's razor, i.e. that the least complicated explanation is usually the most likely. You may have noticed that a lot of what Atwood says is the least likely sounding scenario. It was just a prank, he was doing it to increase people's critical thinking skills, trolls are fabricating evidence against him. I'm going to start calling that Atwood's razor. The least convincing explanation is the one you need to believe, and if anyone questions it, they're a troll and a bully that needs to be flagged off YouTube and reported to the police. So that gets us onto his impulsive, seething livestream video that he made in response to James English, which was more gaslighting from start to finish. At the time of recording, only around 10% of Atwood's subscribers have bothered to tune in, which is terrible, when you consider 75% of James English's have tuned in, which is very, very good on YouTube. But it's probably lucky for Mr. Atwood that not that many people watched his one, due to the state of it. At one point he justified having charges related to minors on his rap sheet from America because the minor was massive. Apparently Wild Woman's massive 16-year-old son was using a business phone to buy drugs for himself. Not a great defence at all, really. I'm not sure that the size of a minor really comes into these things that much, and it still resulted in charges related to minors going onto his rap sheet. Whether they've been removed or not, you can see why the police added those charges on. He also repeatedly said that James made the charges involving the minors seem worse than they were, just by bringing them up, and hinted that this was very, very wrong for James to do, and that James needs to go and get a lawyer. Well, I'd imagine that James English has almost certainly got a very good lawyer, and it is your rap sheet, Shaun. That is what it says on your rap sheet. I don't think James suggested any scenarios about what may have happened. He simply pointed out the rap sheet has charges on it that involve minors. That's just a fact. Shaun's outrage about this is all the more hard to understand because he's now admitted that he's just had more charges which involve minors, in this case in the UK very recently, for publishing the names of children in an ongoing sexual abuse case. I believe it was during a podcast episode with Sonia Poulton, and the names of these children were mentioned, and Mr. Atwood saw completely fit to post the video with the names in it to his hundreds of thousands of subscribers. It's not the kind of thing any man should be proud of, having that on their record, but Mr. Atwood acts furious if anyone mentions the minor charges in the US, but when mentioning the minor charges in the UK, he tries to capitalise on it by stating that it's because the UK government has forbidden him from making any more podcasts about abuse, and that this is an act of targeted censorship against him because he's making waves. That is the implication he's trying to give.
And I now have had to agree, just this week, and here's the third stipulation from the UK government, from the London police, not to make, create, supply, publish any media, communication, publication naming any child witness or victim involved in any sexual abuse court case ever. So I was interviewed by Child Protection because of my activism.
This is very misleading. Anybody who knows how things work in the UK knows that this is very misleading. Nobody in the UK is allowed to publish the names of children in sex abuse cases. They are protected by default. It's always illegal to do it. You can't mention them or it's contempt of court, and Atwood is lucky that he only got a caution for that, in my opinion. But getting a caution and having terms put onto your caution is not the same as the UK government censoring you to stop talking about all incidents of abuse. That is not what's happened. Mr. Atwood's attacks on James English didn't stop there though. He keeps saying that James English interviewing Darren G caused him to lose 100 subscribers an hour, and that he ended up losing 10,000 subs. Unsurprisingly, some people did the research on this, and it appears to be completely untrue. Thank you to the person who posted this in the What Is Truth podcast private Facebook group. You know who you are. You can clearly see from the stats here that there was no loss of subscribers for the month of September when James English did that interview with Darren G. In my opinion, Atwood is just saying this because he knows that you need to provide evidence of actual damage if you want to take somebody to court for defamation. And by saying he lost 10,000 subs, this gives people the illusion that there was some kind of damage caused by James English daring to interview somebody critical of Shaun Attwood. But we know fine well that he's just playing the blame game here. This information doesn't check out about him losing subs, and Mr. Atwood did everything to himself. It's his own actions being noticed that has damaged Shaun Attwood, and it doesn't matter who he blames, he will never be blaming the right people unless he looks in the mirror. But don't take my word for it, do your own research, check for yourself, and check out the links below in my description. You can watch James's video, Shaun's response to James, Shaun's deleted Cali video, and more. I'll put it all down there, and then you can make up your own mind as to whether Mr. Atwood's explanation of events adds up or not. There are already a few thousand people whose eyes are wide open to the situation and know very well that they haven't misremembered anything or made it all up in their heads. Anyway, I'm going to leave that one there, folks, before this video gets ridiculously long. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're not already. Don't forget to subscribe to Wheezy on the What Is Truth podcast on Odyssey. I'm also on Odyssey as well. All the links to everything I've discussed are down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.
There's one question to ask every single time. Show us the proof. Show us Atwood doing this. Where is the proof? Is there a video of him doing this? Where is the proof?